There's a specific kind of exhaustion. I think a lot of us recognize it deep down. It's that feeling you get when you're just pouring everything, your energy, your focus, your hope, really into something or someone. Maybe a person, a job, even just an idea of the future. But it just stays unavailable. Or maybe indifferent. It just doesn't respond. I always picture it like standing at this closed door. And you're not just like knocking politely anymore. You're kind of quietly rearranging your whole life around it, hoping you'll finally fit the keyhole maybe, leaving little gifts, making yourself smaller or maybe louder, trying anything, really, to get noticed. But the real kicker isn't just that the door stays shut, it's that you stay there, waiting. And I think deep down you stay because turning away feels terrifying. Like you'd have to admit something awful about yourself, that maybe you weren't actually worthy of getting in the first place.
And what's really fascinating there, is how universal that feeling is, that longing for affirmation, I suppose. But we get it so mixed up, don't we? We tell ourselves this waiting, this relentless effort is something noble, like devotion or loyalty or just sheer persistence. But if we really, truly look closely, the thing driving it is usually much more, primal.
Yeah.
It's this deep-seated belief, almost instinctual, that our basic worth isn't inherent. It feels conditional, like it totally depends on getting chosen, getting validated, getting seen by whoever's behind that door.
Yeah, the distinction feels crucial. It's taking that desperate longing for real love. Okay, so let's try and unpack this a bit today. The aim isn't to dismiss the pain, because feeling unchosen is. It's deeply human, it hurts. But we really want to dig into the why. Why do we fall into this pattern? This sort of self-abandonment, trying to understand the mechanics behind why we look outside ourselves for that feeling of being complete, and hopefully find a practical way, something you can actually do to start choosing yourself right here, right now, regardless of any doors open or closed. So let's start with the cycle itself. I mean, we're generally smart people, right? We have empathy, we're capable. So why do we keep pouring so much emotional energy into relationships or situations where it's just not coming back? Or maybe you feel tolerated, but definitely not celebrated. You see it in dating all the time, don't you? Where one person does all the running, all the planning, and the other's just sort of reluctantly along for the ride. Or maybe in work, putting in crazy hours for recognition that just never seems to come. What makes us cling like that?
Well, that cleaning you're describing, it really has the signature of fear, of scarcity. It's not the same energy as genuine love or connection. We kind of have to bring in a couple of ideas here from contemplative psychology to really see the difference. What we often call love in those moments when we're desperately trying to earn it, it's closer to what's called upadana, clinging, grasping. It comes from a place of demand, a need for the other person to fill a hole inside us, but real open-hearted connection that's more like metta, loving kindness. And metta, you see, it flows. It's an offering, really, without demanding something specific back. Cleaning, upadana, it's like holding your breath. It needs something in return just to feel okay, just to survive. If you look at how it shows up, grasping is, compulsively checking when they were last online, writing texts and deleting them over and over, or constantly tweaking your personality, trying to be what you think they want. Whereas true metta, it allows the other person to be exactly who they are, even if that means they can't or won't meet you where you need them to. And it also lets you honor your own needs, your boundaries, without needing their validation for it.
Wow, that's a really clear framework. Okay, let me try and ground that for a listener. So upadana, the clinging, that's like the exhausting mental gymnastics of reading into every punctuation mark in a text, trying to figure out what they really mean. And metta is more like being able to send a genuinely warm message and then actually putting your phone down and just getting on with your day, because you offered the connection, but you don't need a specific reply to feel all right.
Exactly, precisely. And the key insight here, maybe the core revelation for anyone listening, is that the whole question of why we stay when it's not reciprocal, it actually has almost nothing to do with the person behind the closed door. It's all internal. It's rooted in this unconscious belief, often laid down really early in life, that somehow we're just not enough on our own, insufficient. We think we're fundamentally incomplete without that specific person's approval. If they choose us for a moment, we feel okay, validated, whole even. But if they pull back, it just confirms that old wound, that fear of unworthiness. And then the grasping actually intensifies.
And this isn't just some abstract idea, right? It feels like a deeply learned survival mechanism. We picked this up so early. That image you mentioned, the bird flying back to a broken nest, it's not illogical from the bird's perspective. It's just instinct, maybe desperation. We learn love is transactional, don't we? Be quiet and you won't get yelled at. Get good grades and you'll get praise. Be useful and they'll keep you around. So naturally, when someone withdraws attention, that old script just kicks right in. and we automatically start performing harder. We try to be more accommodating, maybe sacrifice our own needs even more, maybe try to become invisible. All in this, like, frantic, mostly unconscious effort to earn the choice we feel like we absolutely need to survive. We learned that giving up parts of ourselves was the price of admission, the currency for belonging.
And if we link that to the sort of the bigger architecture of our emotions, we can see exactly why feeling unchosen triggers such a primal fear, that terror of being truly alone, truly unlovable. This is really the territory of the ego. And we can think of the ego, perhaps helpfully, as like the frightened manager of our personality. Its main job is just trying to keep us safe. And it fundamentally believes safety means being chosen. So to manage this underlying fear, the ego constructs this huge, elaborate illusion. It tells us, look, the problem isn't you, it's out there. If you just become perfect enough, if you just fix yourself for the situation, then they'll choose you. And off we go on this exhausting, absolutely endless project of self-improvement, trying to be funnier or smarter or thinner or more agreeable, whatever we think will work. Believing that then finally we'll feel whole. The ego keeps insisting wholeness comes from outside. The story is always, if only they loved me back, then I'd finally be okay. I'd be enough. And that narrative is so seductive, isn't it? Because it gives us something to do. It gives us a sense of control, even if it's illusory, over that awful feeling of lack inside.
But that framing of the ego as the frightened manager, that's
Yeah.
really helpful. It stops being this, like, villain inside us. It's just a part of us that's scared. But the paradox here, and this is where it gets so painful, is that the harder we try to earn that external choice, the more we betray our own choice, our own inherent worth. We basically abandon ourselves day after day. We push our own needs aside, ignore our own boundaries, change our plans, thinking that sacrificing ourselves is the way to get love. But really, it just leads to feeling depleted. And ironically, it leads to a deeper kind of loneliness, one where you feel dependent. But okay, let me push back a little here. We are fundamentally wired for connection, aren't we? For interdependence. How do we balance this drive for, like, self-sovereignty with the very real biological human need to belong? To be seen by others? Isn't wanting some external validation, isn't that just healthy?
That's an excellent point, and it's a really crucial distinction to make.
Yeah.
The desire to connect, to relate, that's absolutely healthy. That's meta energy. The difference lies in where we're coming from when we reach out. Are we coming from a place of fullness, wanting to share, or from a place of, like, desperate scarcity? Healthy connection basically says, I feel whole, and I'd love to share my life, my energy, with you. Clinging, on the other hand, says, I feel like a hole, and I desperately need you to fill me up so I can feel okay, so I can survive. Self-sovereignty isn't about isolating yourself, not at all. It's about realizing that all the energy you're pouring into chasing validation from the wrong source. That same energy could be used to build a life so rich, so fulfilling, that it naturally attracts and sustains genuine, reciprocal connections. It's shifting from, like, begging to be let in to focusing on building your own vibrant inner home. And that realization, that shift, brings us right to the heart of why suffering can last so long. Because often the prolonged pain doesn't come directly from the event itself, like not getting the job or the person ending the relationship. It comes from our reaction to it, our story about it. Nailing this distinction is like finding the master key to unlock things. So when disappointment happens, when that door closes in your face, there's what we can call primary pain. That's the immediate sharp sting. Sadness, maybe anger, loneliness. It's unavoidable. It's just part of the human package.
Okay, so primary pain is the raw, unavoidable hit, the emotional shockwave. Then the secondary suffering. That's the narrative, the story we build on top of it. Can you give some examples of how that shows up for people?
Exactly. Secondary suffering is the mental baggage. It's the stuff we choose to carry, sometimes for years and years. It's that endless, exhausting loop playing in our heads. The commentary, the judgment. It looks like compulsively replaying conversations in your mind, trying to pinpoint the exact moment it went wrong.
Right.
Or having imaginary arguments in the shower, planning what you should have said. It's the big sweeping narratives like, see, I'll never find love, or if only I'd been different, they would have stayed. The ego actually kind of curates the suffering. It holds on to it because it often prefers the weird comfort of a familiar negative identity, like I'm the one who always gets left, or I'm the victim here. It prefers that known pain to the scary uncertainty of just feeling the raw primary pain and letting the story go.
Like that Zen story, right? The man carrying a heavy rock on his back for years, thinking it was just part of him, until someone finally asked, why are you carrying that? He hadn't even realized it was a choice. So for the listener, maybe the key is realizing they're not just experiencing the pain, they might be unconsciously carrying the story about the pain.
Precisely. The ego turns that suffering into an identity, I am the one who is abandoned. I am the one who tries too hard and fails. And that identity, even though it hurts, gives a strange sense of predictability, a perverse kind of safety and meaning. The moment we start to question that identity, to maybe let it go, the ego freaks out. It thinks we're erasing ourselves, but actually we're just making space, creating room for who we could become without that heavy story.
Okay, so if trying to push the feeling down doesn't work, suppression fails, and blaming others or even blaming ourselves, projection, just makes it worse, then the only real way through is to turn towards it with clarity. What does that turning actually involve? What's the mechanism?
The way forward really starts with mindfulness, or sati as it's called. But we need to understand mindfulness not just as like a relaxation hack. It's more fundamental. It's a willingness to actually turn your attention towards the difficult feeling itself. Not with the goal of fixing it or making it go away, but just to know it, to really get intimate with it. We have to learn to sit with that raw, shaky feeling of I'm not enough, instead of immediately scrambling for external validation to soothe it. That moment of clarity, the real turning point, happens when we stop running from the fear of being unchosen and we finally, gently turn around and greet it. And the very first essential step in that greeting is just to see clearly. What is actually happening inside me right now? We have to learn to notice that precise moment when a nice feeling like connection starts to morph into something heavy, into attachment that feels suffocating, or when genuine care twists into an attempt to control the outcome, or when love starts feeling like a transaction, where we're keeping score. Well, I did this for them, so they owe me that response.
That clarity sounds like the doorway then. But how does someone listening practice that? Especially in the heat of the moment when that urgent feeling hits. How do you tell the difference between healthy wanting, like I'd like to connect with this person, and that needy grasping that feels like a void?
Often the body tells the story. The physical reaction is a huge clue. When it's coming from a place of healthy wanting, there's usually a sense of spaciousness around it. You might feel joy when you connect, but you feel okay, peaceful, even if you don't. But when it's coming from need, from that apadan, the body tends to contract. You might feel a knot in your stomach, maybe your breathing gets shallow, a tightness in your chest, that physical clenching. That's the signal of bondage. In that moment, when you notice that sharp awareness, the invitation is to recognize. This urge is coming from scarcity, not from love.
Okay, and that awareness, that moment the body flags up scarcity alert. That's the critical window, isn't it? That's the chance to intervene. So when someone listening feels that familiar, almost overwhelming urge, to send that extra text or check their social media again or try to explain themselves just one more time, what's a practical, physical thing they can do right then to break that cycle? The idea is an intentional interruption, right? A kind of ritual to bring yourself back home. Something really simple, apparently, can be powerful. When the urge hits, just stop, whatever you're doing. Pause the mental spiral. Maybe place a hand gently but firmly right on your heart, maybe on your belly. Wherever you feel that tightness, that physical touch can be really grounding. And then just whisper, even silently, a little affirmation to yourself. Something like, I am here, I see you, you are not alone.
Huh.
What you're doing there is deliberately shifting the focus. You're taking the power back from the external. You're saying, my worth isn't contingent on their reply. I am here for myself right now. You stop the energy spiraling outwards.
Yes, that's absolutely crucial because it instantly reframes that intense emotion, that powerful longing, that ache. It stops being a sign of failure or defectiveness. It becomes a signal, a really important one. It's like a compass needle pointing directly to a place inside you that feels neglected or abandoned or unworthy. And the invitation isn't to shut the signal off, but to actually listen to it. And maybe even use practices rooted in compassion to work with that energy to transform it. One practice that can be incredibly potent here, though sometimes challenging, is Tonglen. It's often translated as taking and sending. It's a pretty radical approach to dealing with the pain of unworthiness or rejection. Instead of fighting the feeling, you consciously invite it in. So as you breathe in, you intentionally visualize breathing in the specific difficulty, the ache of rejection, the feeling of scarcity, the loneliness. You really take it on. And then as you breathe out, you consciously breathe out feelings of ease, compassion, warmth, sending it to yourself and maybe even to the other person involved who might also be struggling in their own way.
Okay, I can see how that might feel really counterintuitive for people. Breathing in the pain, it sounds like it would just make it worse.
Yeah.
Can you unpack the thinking behind that? Why does embracing the ache actually help instead of just amplifying it?
Well, we tend to amplify pain when we resist it, when we fight it. Our instinct is usually to avoid or to push it away.
Right.
But that just shoves it into the shadows where it festers and gains power over us. Tonglen essentially removes the fight. By intentionally breathing in the difficulty, we're making a statement. I am willing to meet this. I'm not afraid of this feeling. I won't push it away. It shifts the energy from resistance to acceptance. And there's an alchemy in that. You start to recognize that the longing itself, the very feeling of the wound, actually contains the potential for deep self-compassion. The suffering stops being just a burden you have to endure, and it starts becoming a kind of teacher. It shows you exactly where you've given your power away, where you've abandoned yourself.
So the whole focus shifts then dramatically. It stops being about that obsessive, painful question that takes up so much brain space. Why won't they choose me? Instead, the question turns right back inwards. Wait, why have I stopped choosing myself?
That reorientation, that's the absolute core of radical self-sovereignty. It really is. When we're clinging like that, often we're engaging in a kind of self-abandonment, but we disguise it. We call it loyalty or patience or even, profound romantic love. But underneath, there's usually this terrified whisper. If I let go of this connection, even if it's unhealthy, I'll be completely alone. Nobody else will ever want me. And that dependency, that fear, it keeps us trapped, convinced our very survival depends on their presence, no matter how neglectful or painful it might be. To start dismantling that trap, we have to apply compassion, but directly to ourselves, to our own internal state. You know that principle you hear in wisdom traditions? Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone. We need to apply that internally. Instead of hating our own neediness or judging ourselves for clinging or feeling ashamed of our grief, which just keeps the cycle going, we learn to meet that scared, clinging part of ourselves with real tenderness. It's like talking directly to that frightened manager, the ego. Hey, that's you. I know you're exhausted and scared. You just want to feel safe. But you don't have to hold on so tight to this specific person or this specific outcome. It's okay. I'm here now. I won't abandon you. That internal act, meeting our own struggle with genuine kindness, that's the real medicine.
Okay, but moving from self-abandonment to self-sovereignty, it feels like it needs more than just realizing it intellectually. It needs, like, concrete actions, right? We probably need actual habits, rituals maybe, that help anchor us in this new way of being. Remind us daily where our true center of worth is. It has to become embodied. So one ritual you mentioned earlier, this ritual of return. When you notice you're spiraling, maybe feeling that anxiety spike that screams for external reassurance, spotting that moment is key. And then you pause, take a deep breath, maybe place both hands firmly on your heart or your solar plexus, feel the warmth, and then say it out loud or just inside. I choose you now. It's not like, oh, I'll do some self-care later. It's right here, right now. A decisive commitment to being present for yourself in this moment.
Exactly. And it's worth understanding why that simple phrase, I choose you now, can be so potent. It literally interrupts the well-worn neural pathway that goes, feel pain, immediately seek external fix. By affirming, I choose you, you're actively teaching your nervous system that the resource isn't out there, it's right here. You're essentially rewiring your brain bit by bit to understand that validation comes from within, not from the text message you might or might not receive. It's the practice of installing a new default setting for self-worth, actively dismantling that old conditional love program.
And then the second ritual, the ceremony of release. That sounds powerful too, because it seems to acknowledge the real pain while also drawing a clear line. This is the idea of writing the unsent letter, right? But it's more than just venting in a journal. You really let it all out. Pour every single unspoken word onto the page, the hurt, the confusion, the anger, the hope you had, the resentment, all of it. Without censoring anything, just get it all down, acknowledging how real that attachment felt.
Yes, get it all out. But the absolutely crucial final step is the declaration of self-sovereignty after you've emptied it all out. Once you feel you've expressed everything directed outward towards the other person or situation, you write the definitive release at the very end, something clear like, I release you, not because you don't matter, but because I do. And then comes the physical act, the irreversible part. You destroy the letter, burn it safely, shred it into tiny pieces, bury it in the garden. The content itself stops mattering. That physical act of destruction, watching the flames, hearing the shredder, it sends a really deep signal to your subconscious, it says. The contract is broken. The transaction is over. I am taking my energy back home. The debt is canceled.
I can almost hear that frightened manager, the ego, protesting loudly right now. It loves the drama, right? It loves the familiar story, even the pain of lack. It's whispering, no, if you let go of the pain, you lose the hope. If you release the story, who will you even be?
So how do we finally, truly step out of that shadow? How do we step into the light of our own completeness without feeling like we're erasing ourselves? That brings us to a really deep place, a contemplation of the very self we've been trying so desperately to prove is worthy. It really raises the question, what is this self, actually? In some wisdom traditions, this points towards the insight of anatta, or not self. which is the rather profound realization that there isn't actually a fixed, solid, permanent I inside us that needs completing or validating from the outside. The self we usually cling to, it's more like a flowing river, just a collection of thoughts, feelings, sensations, memories, stories, all constantly changing. The ego wants a fixed identity, a stable me that needs to be loved by others to confirm its existence. But awareness, a deeper knowing, recognizes that maybe we're not just the river. Maybe we're the whole riverbed, the whole space, the entire environment in which the river flows. We're not just one little drop of water frantically trying to prove its worth. If we mistake ourselves for just the drop, yeah, we spend our lives desperately searching for something external to make us feel solid and secure. But if we begin to sense that we're the whole space, we realize we're already inherently whole, already unshakable.
Wow. Okay. So letting go of the need to be chosen is actually about letting go of needing that fixed external definition of who we are in the first place. That feels like the ultimate freedom, maybe. The ego screams, if you let go, you lose everything, your identity, your past, your hope. But awareness gently replies, no. If you keep holding on so tightly, you'll never discover your true self, the one that's already free.
Exactly. And realizing this completely transforms how we view the original experience, that person who didn't choose you. In a strange way, they gave you an incredible gift. Unintentionally, of course. They freed you from the exhausting illusion that your value has to be earned, that it depends on your performance or on catching their eye. They showed you with painful clarity exactly where you had outsourced your sense of wholeness, because real unconditional love, it just meets you exactly as you are. If you're not receiving that, it's not actually a statement about your worth. It's simply information about the other person's capacity, their availability, their own journey.
Which brings us right back around to that luminous truth, doesn't it? You were never actually unchosen. You were always the one choosing. You just weren't choosing yourself. Every text you sent into the void, every boundary you let slide, every dream you put on hold to make space for their absence, those were all choices. Choices made, perhaps unconsciously, against your own well-being. And now the invitation is to turn that light inward, to stop holding your candle out, hoping someone else will finally see how bright it is, and instead turn the flame inwards. Use its light to warm your own hands. Realize that light was always meant to guide you home.
That is the final, unshakable freedom. Liberation isn't found in finally getting chosen. It's found in the deep, powerful, embodied realization that you no longer need to be. You were never broken. So you're not healing in order to finally become worthy of love. You're simply uncovering the love that was already there all along. That quiet, steady, resilient self-compassion that can't be taken away. That intense ache you sometimes feel in your chest. It's not a sign you failed. It's the echo of your own depth asking for your attention. That flash of anger. It's not just destructive. It can be sacred fire showing you the boundary that says, my well-being, my sovereignty matters. When you stop looking outside for validation, you step into a kind of inner power that no one else can give you and no one can take away. You're not waiting at the door anymore. You're starting to discover you have the capacity to walk right through walls.
Yeah. We started this whole deep dive feeling kind of stuck, maybe paralyzed at that closed door, terrified to walk away. And we're leaving with this sense that actually we always had the key to our own inner home, our own immense value. We weren't locked out of love at all. We were just facing the wrong way.
And that leaves us, perhaps, with a really potent invitation to carry forward into life. Now that you're free, now that you've consciously decided to take back your energy, to redirect your love towards yourself first, what will you do with that love? Not the love that begs or bargains, not the love that replays old hurts, but the love that flows from a place of fullness, without condition, without expectation. Like a river finally allowed to flow freely, ready to nourish the ground of your own life. And the answer to that question, well, isn't really found in words, is it? It's found in how you choose to live, starting right now.